What if I told you that Hollywood's biggest stars were hiding secrets so scandalous they'd make today's tabloids look like Sunday school newsletters? We're talking about affairs that toppled careers, cover-ups that involved the FBI, and mysteries so dark they're still unsolved today. These aren't just gossip. These are the stories Hollywood desperately tried to bury. The mystery that started it all. Thomas Ince's passing in 1924 remains one of Hollywood's most puzzling cases. And honestly, the more you dig into it, the more bizarre it gets. Here's a guy who basically invented the movie business as we know it. He created the studio system, the shooting script, production schedules, everything. Without Thomas Ince, Hollywood would look completely different today. By 1924, he was worth millions and living like a king in Benedict Canyon. November 16th, 1924. Ince steps aboard William Randolph Hearst's yacht, the Oneida, for what's supposed to be a birthday celebration. Also on board, Hearst's mistress Marion Davies, Charlie Chaplin, and a handful of other Hollywood elite. Sounds like a nice weekend cruise, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. The official story goes like this. Ince ate something that disagreed with him. Bad liquor, probably, since this was prohibition. Got sick, went home, and passed away 2 days later from heart failure. Case closed. But here's where it gets weird. Ince's body was cremated immediately. No autopsy. The medical documentation was signed by a doctor who wasn't even there when Ince passed away, and every single person on that yacht suddenly developed the most convenient case of amnesia you've ever seen. Chaplin claimed he wasn't even on the boat, despite witnesses seeing him board. Marion Davies never spoke about that weekend publicly, not once in 40 years. Hearst banned any mention of the cruise in his newspapers, which controlled most of the media at the time. Then there's Luella Parsons. She was supposedly on the yacht as a struggling gossip columnist. Right after Ince's passing, Hearst gave her a lifetime contract, making her the most powerful gossip columnist in Hollywood. Coincidence? You tell me. The whispered version that's persisted for a century caught Marion Davies with Chaplin in a compromising position. In a jealous rage, he pulled a weapon. In the dark, he hit Ince by mistake. The district attorney looked into it briefly, then suddenly didn't. The investigation was closed with no explanation. Ince's widow, Nell, never had to work again. Hearst set up a trust fund that lasted until she passed away in 1951. And she never, ever talked about that weekend. Drop a comment. Do you think Ince was the victim of foul play? Because what happened to our next star makes this mystery look simple. The it girl who had everything stolen. Clara Bow was America's sweetheart, the girl every woman wanted to be, and every man wanted to date. She had it, that indefinable quality that made her absolutely magnetic on screen. But behind that vivacious smile was a childhood so traumatic, it's hard to even talk about. Clara grew up in crushing poverty in Brooklyn's tenements, caring for a mother who suffered from severe mental illness. When young Clara dared to dream about becoming an actress, her mentally ill mother actually tried to harm her with a knife. Her father had violated her boundaries repeatedly as a teenager, trauma that haunted her forever. By the early 1930s, though, Clara was on top of the world. She was receiving 45,000 fan letters monthly and defining what it meant to be a modern woman. Then everything collapsed, and it wasn't even her fault. Her secretary, Daisy DeVoe, had been stealing from her. When Clara discovered it and fired her, Daisy didn't go quietly. She took Clara to court and aired every single private detail of her life during the trial. The tabloids had a field day. Every affair, every party, every secret Clara had trusted her secretary with became front-page news. Remember, this was 1930. Women weren't supposed to have romantic appetites, let alone admit to them publicly. The public turned on Clara overnight. Theaters in the Midwest banned her films. Women's groups demanded she be removed from screens. Paramount, the studio that had made millions from her talent, didn't lift a finger to defend her. Clara's mental health, already fragile, from her traumatic childhood, completely collapsed. She suffered a complete nervous breakdown while filming and had to be hospitalized, mirroring the fate of her mentally ill mother. The It Girl became the forgotten girl, driven from Hollywood by lies and a vengeful employee. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can destroy you most completely. But Clara's betrayal was nothing compared to the scandal that rocked our next star's marriage. A marriage built on lies. Jean Harlow was Hollywood's original platinum blonde bombshell, and when she married filmmaker Paul Bern in September 1932, everyone thought she'd found her happily ever after. 2 months later, Bern was found deceased from an apparent self-inflicted incident. His body was in their home with a weapon beside him and a note left for Harlow. At first, police didn't suspect foul play. But then the truth came out, and it was stranger than any movie script. Bern had never officially divorced his first wife, Dorothy Millette. Millette had struggled with severe mental health issues and had been living in a sanitarium, financially supported by Bern, who felt responsible for her condition. She'd suffered multiple breakdowns and was completely dependent on his care. After Bern's passing, Millette mysteriously disappeared. Her body was later found in the Sacramento River. People started wondering, had she come to confront Bern about his new marriage? Had she been driven to violence by the betrayal? Some even suggested MGM had covered up the real story to protect Harlow's career. The studio was known for managing their star's public image, so maybe they pushed the idea of self-infliction to keep things clean. But here's what really happened. A coroner's inquest revealed that Bern had struggled with depression for years. His friends testified that the pressures of marriage and career had been overwhelming him. Millette's passing was ruled self-inflicted as well, with no evidence of violence toward Bern. Still, the rumors persist. Sometimes the truth isn't dramatic enough for Hollywood, so people create their own versions. Speaking of Hollywood creating its own drama, wait until you hear about the tragedy that happened right on the famous sign. Tragedy above Tinseltown. In 1932, the Hollywood sign became the site of one of the entertainment industry's most heartbreaking moments. Peg Entwistle's story is one of dreams deferred and the crushing weight of rejection in a town that promised everything but delivered heartache. Peg was a talented Broadway actress who'd moved to Los Angeles chasing her Hollywood dreams. She'd already experienced profound loss. Her father had passed away when she was just a child, and she'd struggled with depression and financial difficulties throughout her career. When she landed a role in 13 Women, it felt like her big break was finally here. But after completing the film, RKO Pictures decided not to renew her contract. The rejection was devastating. On that September evening, Peg told her uncle she was going to the drugstore to meet friends. Instead, she climbed the Hollywoodland sign and made the heartbreaking decision to end her life by jumping from the letter H. A hiker found her belongings first: a jacket, a shoe, and a purse with a note inside. Following the path down the mountain, they discovered Peg's body. In one of life's cruelest ironies, just days after her passing, a letter arrived at her home offering her a lead role in a play about a woman driven to self-harm, the very opportunity she'd been desperately seeking. Peg's story became sensationalized in the tabloids, but behind the headlines was a talented woman who simply couldn't handle another rejection in a town built on them. In 2014, a group gathered to watch her only major film, 13 Women, honoring her memory and raising awareness for mental health. Her tragedy reminds us that behind every Hollywood dream deferred is a real person with real pain. But what happened to our next star was an even bigger scandal, because it involved one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. America's sweetheart's secret shame. Ingrid Bergman was the epitome of class and elegance in the 1940s Hollywood. She'd won an Oscar for Gaslight and was absolutely adored by American audiences. Then 1950 happened, and everything changed. Bergman had an affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini while filming Stromboli. Both were married to other people at the time. When news of the relationship spread, the reaction was explosive, especially when it came out that Bergman was pregnant with Rossellini's child. A U.S. senator actually called her a vile free love cultist and urged that her films not be shown in America. Can you imagine? A senator taking time out of running the country to condemn an actress for having an affair. The public's reaction was vicious. Bergman was effectively exiled from Hollywood, her once spotless image completely destroyed. She chose to stay in Italy with Rossellini, but the personal cost was enormous. Her ex-husband fought for custody of their daughter Pia, and Bergman didn't see her child for 7 years. During this painful separation, Bergman wrote heartbreaking letters to Pia, expressing her anguish at being apart from her child, while Pia grew up believing her mother had abandoned her for fame. Here's what's amazing, though. Bergman made one hell of a comeback. She returned to Hollywood in the mid-1950s with Anastasia, which was a hit with American audiences. In 1957, she won her second Oscar for the role, though she was still cautious about returning to the States. By the end of the decade, even that senator, who'd condemned her publicly, apologized. Sometimes America's capacity for forgiveness surprises everyone, including the stars who need it most. But forgiveness wasn't available for our next star, whose secret stayed hidden for decades. The King's Hidden Child. Clark Gable, the undisputed king of Hollywood, had an affair with co-star Loretta Young during filming of Call of the Wild in 1935. The result? A pregnancy that both stars desperately wanted to keep secret. Young knew that having a child out of wedlock would destroy her career, so she disappeared for several months. When she returned, she claimed to have adopted a child. But anyone with eyes could see the baby looked exactly like Gable. To further hide the truth, Young even had her daughter's ears surgically altered because they resembled Gable's so closely. Can you imagine putting a child through surgery just to hide paternity? The charade worked for decades. Hollywood insiders suspected, but nobody talked. The adoption story held, and both Gable's and Young's careers continued uninterrupted. Here's the heartbreaking part, though. In the 1990s, the truth finally came out. Young had carried this secret and trauma for decades, and the revelation that the encounter involved assault made the cover-up even more tragic. Young had been protecting not just her career, but processing trauma in an era when women had no support for such experiences. The daughter lived her entire childhood not knowing who her real father was, and Gable never acknowledged his child. Sometimes the secrets we keep to protect ourselves end up hurting the people we love most. Quick question, did you know about Gable and Young's secret? Drop a comment because this next story involves an even bigger cover-up. The innocent man's destruction. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle's story makes me furious every time I tell it, because here was a genuinely good man whose life was destroyed by lies and media manipulation. In September 1921, Arbuckle was on top of the world. He'd just signed a $3 million contract with Paramount. That's about $50 million today. He was beloved by audiences, had mentored Charlie Chaplin, and discovered Buster Keaton. Kids wanted to be him. Adults felt like he was their friend. Labor Day weekend, he threw a party at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco to celebrate his contract. During the party, actress Virginia Rappe became severely ill. They called a doctor immediately. 4 days later, she passed away from internal complications. That's when media mogul William Randolph. Hearst saw his chance for destruction. Hearst despised Arbuckle for reasons that are still debated. Professional jealousy? Personal snubs? Who knows? But his newspaper empire printed the most vicious lies imaginable. They painted Arbuckle as a monster. Headlines actually read, "Arbuckle, the Beast, held for serious charges." They fabricated stories so horrific, I won't repeat them here. Not a single word was true. The public turned overnight. Theater owners refused his films. His wife left him. Friends vanished. But here's what really happened. Nothing criminal. Arbuckle wasn't even alone with rap. Other people were present the entire time. The prosecution's key witness had a criminal record for extortion and couldn't keep her story straight. 3 trials. The first 2 ended in hung juries, 10-2 for acquittal. The third jury deliberated for 6 minutes and wanted to write him an apology. Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done him. But innocence didn't matter. The damage was done. Those trials cost him everything. The studios blacklisted him completely. The man, who'd been Hollywood's highest-paid actor, couldn't get work as an extra. In 1933, Warner Brothers finally offered him a comeback. He completed his first day filming, went to bed happy for the first time in 12 years. The next morning, he passed away in his sleep from heart failure. He was only 46. All because of lies that sold newspapers. Makes you wonder what other innocent people have been destroyed for profit, doesn't it? Speaking of innocent victims, wait until you hear about the next star's horrific childhood. The genius who never had a childhood. Charlie Chaplin's rise to fame is one of Hollywood's greatest success stories, but his journey started in circumstances so heartbreaking they'd make you weep. His father passed away when Charlie was young, and his mother Hannah suffered from severe mental illness caused partly by malnutrition that literally affected her brain. By age 7, Charlie was shuffled between London workhouses and residential schools for paupers. When his mother completely broke down during a stage performance, 5-year-old Charlie had to finish her act. At 14, his mother was permanently committed to a mental asylum, leaving Charlie and his half-brother Sidney completely alone. So when Chaplin became Hollywood royalty, you'd think his personal life would finally be happy. Instead, it became a source of endless controversy. His marriages were the biggest scandal. His first 2 wives were only 16 years old when he married them. His second marriage to Lita Grey was rushed after she claimed pregnancy, though that turned out to be false. When they divorced, the world saw Chaplin painted as a terrible husband and father. The settlement was a record-breaking $800,000, the largest in American history at the time. This scandal severely damaged his reputation. But it didn't stop there. His fourth wife? He first met her when she was 12 years old. He waited until she was 16 to start pursuing her. And when she became pregnant, he secretly married her, fearing legal troubles. During the Cold War, his outspoken social criticism led some to believe he was sympathetic to communism. This caught FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover's attention. In 1952, after a trip to England, Chaplin's re-entry permit was revoked, effectively exiling him from America. The little tramp who'd made the world laugh spent his final decades in Switzerland, banned from the country that had made him famous. He returned briefly in 1972 to accept an honorary Oscar, but by then, the damage to his American legacy was done. Sometimes, genius comes with a price that's almost too high to pay. But our next star paid an even higher price for something that wasn't even his fault. The all-American hero's secret nightmare. Errol Flynn embodied everything American men wanted to be: dashing, adventurous, the perfect swashbuckling hero. But in 1943, accusations surfaced that threatened to destroy his entire career. 2 teenage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee, claimed Flynn had assaulted them after slipping something into their drinks. The case went to trial, and the district attorney, aware of Flynn's fame, made sure the jury was mostly women to level the playing field. Flynn had a secret weapon, though: Jerry Giesler, one of Hollywood's most famous defense lawyers. This guy was known for getting his clients acquitted in impossible cases. Giesler cross-examined the girls, questioning their credibility and systematically dismantling the prosecution's case. In the end, Flynn was cleared of all charges, but many still believed he was guilty, thinking his fame and connections had bought him freedom. The scandal destroyed his reputation permanently. His career never fully recovered, and his popularity declined steadily. Flynn passed away in 1959, but the shadow of those accusations followed him to the end. His story serves as a reminder that in Hollywood, sometimes perception matters more than truth. Whether he was innocent or guilty, the court of public opinion had already made its decision. And speaking of public opinion, our next star's story shows how quickly it can turn deadly. The beauty who couldn't escape her past. Olive Thomas was one of the early 1900s most popular stars, known for her stunning beauty and bold photo shoots that pushed boundaries for the era. But her personal life was a complete mess: multiple marriages, countless affairs, and enough drama to fill a soap opera. She married actor Jack Pickford, brother of Mary Pickford, in 1916. Their marriage was troubled from the start because Jack couldn't keep his hands to himself. In 1920, Jack contracted syphilis and passed it on to Olive. Back then, syphilis was treated with bichloride of mercury, essentially poison. The couple took a vacation to Paris, and on September 25, 1920, tragedy struck. After returning to their hotel in the early hours, Olive accidentally ingested the mercury solution. She passed away a few days later. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, but rumors quickly spread that Olive had taken the poison intentionally after learning about Jack's infidelities and the disease he'd given her. Some even suspected Jack might have harmed her intentionally to collect her substantial life insurance policy. The true circumstances were never fully explained, and suspicions of foul play persisted. Despite the theories, the coroner ruled her passing accidental. At just 25 years old, Olive Thomas's life was cut short, leaving Hollywood with one of its earliest unsolved mysteries. The intrigue surrounding her case continues to fascinate people today, proving that some Hollywood mysteries never get old. But this next mystery involves one of cinema's greatest directors, and the theory will blow your mind. The genius director's dark theory. Here's a theory so wild it sounds like fiction. What if Orson Welles, the legendary director of Citizen Kane, was connected to the infamous Black Dahlia case? This shocking theory was introduced by Mary Pacios in her 1999 book about the case. Pacios, who'd grown up with victim Elizabeth Short in Massachusetts, spent years researching the unsolved crime. She wanted to correct misconceptions about Short and uncover the truth. According to Pacios, Wells's name kept appearing in her research. She pointed out it wasn't far-fetched for Short, an aspiring actress, to have crossed paths with the famous filmmaker in the 1940s Hollywood. Pacios speculated that Welles might have had a psychological condition that caused violent behavior when frustrated. This could explain the brutal nature of the crime, she argued. Here's where it gets really eerie. In the 1940s, Welles performed magic acts where he pretended to slice women and mannequins in half. Even more chilling, he designed mannequins with mutilated faces that resembled Short's appearance after the crime, and he created these 3 months before Short was found. Despite the controversial nature of her theory, Pacios stood firm. She believed no one cared about Short's memory, so she felt compelled to share what she saw as the facts. The Black Dahlia case remains unsolved to this day, with various suspects, including Welles, becoming part of the mystery. Whether there's any truth to this theory, it shows how Hollywood's darkest mysteries can implicate even its greatest talents. But our next star's mystery isn't theoretical. It's a confirmed tragedy that shocked America. The Little Rascals' Final Fight. Carl Switzer, better known as Alfalfa from Our Gang, had a life that ended far too soon and far too violently. Like many child stars, Carl struggled to find his identity after his childhood fame ended. He'd been his family's breadwinner from a young age, but as an adult, found himself typecast and unable to secure meaningful roles. After his acting career faded, Switzer became skilled at training and breeding hunting dogs. This skill would ultimately lead to his tragic end. In 1958, Switzer was hired to train a dog for Moses Bud Stilts. When the dog ran away, Stilts demanded Switzer either find it or pay him equivalent money. Switzer found the dog, but it cost him $50, about $500 today. Feeling ripped off, he went to Stilts' house with his friend Jack Piot to confront him. What happened next depends on who you believe. According to Stilts, Switzer threatened him with a blade, so he grabbed his weapon in self-defense. During the struggle, Stilts' 14-year-old stepson, Tom Corrigan, almost got shot by accident. Stilts fired, hitting Switzer in the groin. Switzer was rushed to the hospital, but passed away from internal bleeding shortly after. He was only 31. The case was ruled self-defense, but Corrigan later admitted that Stilts intentionally harmed Switzer. Switzer left behind a young son and a life that had promised so much more than its tragic ending. It's heartbreaking how many child stars from that era met terrible ends. The entertainment industry has always been brutal, but it seems especially cruel to those who started so young. Speaking of cruel endings, our next story involves one of Hollywood's greatest love stories and how the studio system destroyed it. The love story Hollywood destroyed. Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy were Hollywood's sweethearts in the 1930s, starring in romantic musicals that made audiences believe in true love. But behind the scenes, their real romance was being systematically destroyed by the very studio that profited from their chemistry. Their on-screen magic quickly became off-screen reality. They fell deeply in love, but Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM Studios, saw their relationship as a threat to their marketability. In Hollywood's conservative atmosphere, he worried their romance could hurt their careers. The situation became devastating when Jeanette discovered she was pregnant with Nelson's child. In that era, having a baby out of wedlock would destroy their careers completely. Mayer threatened to blacklist them both if they kept the baby. Under intense pressure, Jeanette made the heartbreaking decision to end the pregnancy. This choice created a rift between the lovers that never fully healed. When Jeanette later suffered a miscarriage, Mayer and others believed it was connected to her earlier decision. Heartbroken, Nelson ended their relationship. Mayer manipulated Jeanette into signing more contracts and went to extraordinary lengths to keep the couple apart. He even sabotaged Nelson's car and sent threats when they tried to reconnect. When Mayer finally passed away, many attended his funeral, but someone expressed what many felt. They just wanted to make sure the devil was really gone. The forced separation and loss of their child haunted both stars for the rest of their lives. Jeanette never had children with anyone else, and both carried the pain of their lost love until they passed away. This story shows how Hollywood once controlled every aspect of stars' personal lives, often with devastating consequences for real human beings behind the glamour. But what happened to our next star was even more tragic, and it became one of America's most enduring mysteries: the Man of Steel's final day. George Reeves brought Superman to life for an entire generation of children, but his own life ended under circumstances so mysterious they're still debated today. On June 16, 1959, Reeves was found deceased from a gunshot wound. The official report ruled it self-inflicted, but many have questioned this conclusion for decades. Reeves felt trapped by the Superman role that made him famous. Children would approach him expecting him to fly, and he worried about being typecast, often becoming depressed about his limited career prospects and how the public saw him as childish rather than as a serious actor. His personal life was troubled too. He was engaged to Leonore Lemon, but their relationship was strained. On the night he passed away, Lemon and her guests allegedly waited 45 minutes before calling police after hearing the gunshot. Actor Fred Crane later claimed Lemon returned to the room and said, "Tell them I was down here," raising serious questions about what really happened. One persistent theory involves Eddie Mannix, a powerful Hollywood figure known for shady dealings. Rumors suggested Reeves had an affair with Mannix's wife, Toni Lanier, which might have led to vengeful action. No fingerprints were found on the weapon, which seemed suspicious. Adding to the mystery, rumors surfaced that Toni Mannix confessed on her deathbed, claiming her husband had Reeves eliminated in retaliation for the affair. Despite the lack of solid evidence, the possibility of foul play has kept this as one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The man who made children believe someone could fly became the center of a mystery that may never be solved. But if you think that mystery is complex, wait until you hear about the crime that stumped police for decades. The director's unsolved case. William Desmond Taylor's mysterious passing on February 1st, 1922, remains one of Hollywood's most puzzling cases. Taylor, a popular film director, was found deceased in his bungalow in Westlake, Los Angeles. He'd spent the evening with his girlfriend Mabel Normand. But what happened after she left raised countless questions. When Taylor's body was discovered, a crowd had gathered. A man claiming to be a doctor appeared and declared Taylor had passed away from a stomach hemorrhage, then quickly disappeared. Further investigation revealed Taylor had actually been shot, raising immediate suspicions about the true cause. Several people became suspects. Mabel Normand was questioned, along with Mary Miles Minter, an actress obsessed with Taylor. Edward Sands, a former employee who'd stolen $5,000 from Taylor, was also investigated. But here's where it gets really strange. Just 1 week later, police were ordered to stop investigating the case. Just like that. Case closed. Some believed Taylor's passing was connected to organized crime. Taylor had been outspoken about substance abuse on movie sets and had even exposed trafficking rings, putting him at odds with dangerous people. The theory goes that criminals, angered by Taylor's actions, orchestrated his elimination and used their influence to cover it up. The sudden halt to the investigation certainly supports this theory. Nearly a century later, we still don't know who ended William Desmond Taylor's life or why. Sometimes Hollywood's mysteries are too big even for Hollywood to solve. Our next star wasn't mysterious at all. She was completely outrageous and didn't care who knew it. The woman who shocked America. Tallulah Bankhead was larger than life in every possible way. Her fearless attitude toward living on her own terms made her both a constant source of fascination and endless controversy. Bankhead's life in Hollywood was one scandal after another. She was completely open about her drinking and substance use, and she never shied away from discussing her romantic exploits. Her candidness shocked people in a much more conservative time. She once agreed to star in Devil and the Deep solely because she wanted to sleep with co-star Gary Cooper. That's the kind of honesty that made studio executives break out in cold sweats. She had high-profile relationships with both men and women, and rumors spread of affairs with some of the biggest stars of the time. Bankhead even reportedly had to end 4 pregnancies before having a hysterectomy at age 31, something far less common and much more stigmatized in those days. Despite her outrageous public persona, Bankhead struggled with deep loneliness and insecurity. She once said, "I'm as pure as the driven slush," but privately battled depression and used her wild behavior as a mask for emotional pain. Despite the controversy, Bankhead became a Hollywood legend, known as much for her personal life as her performances. Her outrageous behavior and willingness to defy social norms made her both a target and a beloved icon. If she were around today, she'd definitely be a tabloid favorite, with her fearless and free-spirited nature keeping the public fascinated. But our next scandal involves two of Hollywood's biggest stars and a secret that rocked Tinseltown. The secret affair that scandalized Hollywood. Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich were two of Hollywood's most glamorous and powerful stars. Garbo captivated audiences in films like Anna Karenina, while Dietrich gained fame in movies like Shanghai Express. Both women were influential, beautiful, and mysterious. But rumors circulated about a secret affair between them that, if true, could have destroyed both their careers. During that era, such a relationship was absolutely taboo and would have meant complete professional ruin. Reports claim Garbo fell deeply in love with Dietrich, but Dietrich viewed their connection as nothing more than a casual fling. Afterward, some suggest Dietrich began gossiping about Garbo, which hurt her deeply. As a result, Garbo allegedly demanded that all future relationships be kept entirely secret. This secretive aspect of their rumored connection became more widely discussed when author Diana McClellan published The Girl's Sappho Goes to Hollywood. In the book, McClellan suggests Garbo and Dietrich's relationship was part of a larger web of hidden connections in Hollywood's elite circles. Despite these persistent claims, both actresses denied ever having such a relationship. In fact, they both insisted they'd never even met, despite starring together in a German silent film years earlier. This contradiction has left many wondering whether their story was truly as innocent as they claimed, or if Hollywood's biggest stars were hiding something far more fascinating than anyone imagined. Sometimes the most scandalous rumors are the ones stars work hardest to deny. But our next star couldn't hide her problems. They literally ended her life. The comedy queen's final act. Thelma Todd was one of comedy's brightest stars during her peak, known for her perfect timing and work with legends like the Marx Brothers. Her charm and wit made her a favorite among audiences as the beautiful comedic foil in countless films. But behind the scenes, Todd struggled with serious drinking issues that were well known to friends and colleagues, though rarely discussed publicly. This addiction may have contributed to the tragic circumstances surrounding her passing. On December 14th, 1935, Todd was found deceased in her car, parked in the garage of her beach house in California. At first, police suspected an accident or possible self-inflicted incident since there were no clear signs of foul play. However, many people, including her friends and family, felt something wasn't right about the whole situation. Some suspected her boyfriend, Roland West, who had a troubled relationship with Todd. Rumors suggested her passing might have been the result of foul play, possibly staged to look accidental. Despite these suspicions, police never brought charges against Roland West or anyone else. The scene left too many unanswered questions. To this day, many believe the true cause of Todd's passing remains a mystery, whether it was an accident, self-inflicted, or something more sinister. Her untimely passing left behind a sense of loss for Hollywood's golden age and its comedic legacy. Sometimes the brightest stars burn out in the most tragic ways. But our next star's story is tragic for completely different reasons. It involves betrayal by the person who should have protected him most. The country star's violent end. Spade Cooley was one of the biggest names in country music during the 1940s, known for his musical talent and chart-topping records. His performances were widely popular, and he even appeared in movies and TV shows, becoming a household name. However, behind his success, Cooley struggled with the pressures of fame, which led to paranoia and serious anger issues. These emotional struggles resulted in a tragedy that shocked America in 1961. Cooley's second wife, Ella Mae Evans, was a singer in his band. Their relationship was turbulent, and Cooley often accused her of infidelity. One day, convinced she was having an affair, Cooley flew into a violent rage. In that brutal outburst, Cooley assaulted Ella so severely that she passed away from her injuries. Their young daughter witnessed the horrific attack, making the crime even more devastating. The trial that followed captured national attention. In August 1961, Cooley was convicted of first-degree ending another person's life and sentenced to life in prison. The beloved entertainer was now a convicted perpetrator of the ultimate crime. In 1969, California Governor Ronald Reagan considered granting Cooley a pardon. However, Cooley tragically passed away that same year before the pardon could be issued. Today, his legacy is remembered more for the tragic end of his personal life than for his musical achievements. Fame couldn't save him from his own demons, and it certainly couldn't save his wife from his violence. And finally, our last rumor involves a Hollywood bad boy who turned his arrest into career gold. The bad boy who beat the system. Robert Mitchum was Hollywood's ultimate bad boy, known for his roles in films like Out of the Past and his couldn't-careless attitude toward scandal. In 1948, he found himself in trouble that should have ended his career, but somehow made him even more popular. On August 31st, 1948, Mitchum was arrested for marijuana possession at a friend's house in Hollywood. Police had been watching him and his friend, Lila Leeds, a 20-year-old actress, for months before they made their move. Mitchum admitted to using marijuana for years, and in his typical blunt style, he said, "I knew I would get caught sooner or later. I'm ruined." The arrest was huge news, especially since he had a large fan base, particularly among women. The media had a field day, and some even called for his movies to be banned. But Mitchum's studio, RKO, stuck by him, counting on his loyal fans to stay true. In February 1949, Mitchum was convicted and sentenced to 60 days in jail. He served time at the Wayside Honor Farm in Castaic, California, where he earned the nickname Mr. Cement block of 1949 inches for his work-making cement blocks. Despite the jail time, Mitchum's career wasn't over. He was released early for good behavior and quickly returned to acting. His popularity remained strong, and he continued making critically praised films. The arrest didn't have a long-lasting negative effect on his career. In fact, some argued it only added to his bad boy image, making him even more attractive to fans who loved his rebellious persona. Mitchum didn't speak much about marijuana later in life, but he did express skepticism about legalization, saying more research was needed first. His story proves that sometimes in Hollywood, the right kind of scandal can actually help your career instead of destroying it. The real story behind the stories. 20 stars, 20 scandals, and a century of secrets finally exposed. But here's what really fascinates me about these stories. Some of them were complete fabrications designed to sell newspapers, while others were darker than anyone imagined. The pattern that emerges is clear. Hollywood's golden age wasn't just about glamour and movie magic. It was a system that chewed up vulnerable people and spit them out when they were no longer profitable. Studios controlled every aspect of stars' lives. The media sensationalized their pain for profit, and the public consumed it all like entertainment. Think about it. How many of these stars were essentially children when they entered the system? How many were running from poverty or trauma, only to find more trauma waiting for them in Hollywood? The industry that promised to make their dreams come true often became their worst nightmare. What's your take on these stories? Drop a comment and let me know which one shocked you most. Were you surprised by how many turned out to be true? Or how many innocent people were destroyed by lies? Because here's the thing. These stories aren't just historical curiosities. They're warnings about what happens when we treat real human beings as entertainment, when we consume their pain like popcorn, and when we let powerful systems crush the vulnerable. Today's celebrities have more protection, unions, lawyers, social media to tell their own stories. But the hunger for scandal hasn't changed. We're still fascinated by the downfall of the famous, still eager to believe the worst about people we've never met. Maybe that's the real lesson from Hollywood's golden age. Behind every scandal is a real person with real pain. And sometimes, the most shocking thing isn't the rumor. It's how easily we believe it. If these golden age secrets fascinated you as much as they fascinated me, you're going to love diving deeper into Hollywood's hidden history. I've got stories about the stars who fought back against the studio system, the executives who got their comeuppance, and scandals so big they're still being covered up today. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because the rabbit hole goes so much deeper than this. Trust me, you haven't seen anything yet.